Hi, everybody. This is Gad Saad. I hope that you're having a nice evening. Today, I wanted to spend some time discussing an idea that I've been toying with for at least a few days, but actually, its roots go much further back. In my 2007 book, The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, I discussed how products could serve as extended phenotypes of ourselves. This is an idea from, at least the idea of extended phenotypes comes from Richard Dawkins, who argued that animals have an extension of their phenotypes and that they can create uh, objects or architectural designs outside of themselves that are nonetheless within the purview of their genetic imperatives. So think about the bird's nest or the beaver's dam or the spider's web. All of these architectural designs are part of that animal's extended phenotype. And I argued in the book that many products serve as extended phenotypes in the way that we express ourselves when we navigate in the world, in the way that we use products to engage in sexual signaling, and so on. And so, products really, of course, are an extension of ourselves. And there's some interesting research in consumer behavior, albeit it's not coming from an evolutionary perspective, speaks exactly to that point that we choose products that are congruent with our self identity. And so today, what I wanted to do is discuss what would, if I asked you to come up with your basket of goods or possessions, and you see why I'm saying possessions, because in one of the slides, the possessions are actually going to be animate objects. But what would capture who you are, in the sense of your aesthetic preferences, your artistic preferences, and so on. Your yeah, the cultural artifacts that appeal to you. And the idea was reignited in me because this past Sunday, some of you may have noticed that I shared a photo, an image on my social media of a really cool trailer that was both, as a fan of mine said, it really captured me well because it's both retro and futuristic at the same time. And so that got me to thinking about, what is my basket? What is the Gaddism basket of goods? And then I would love for you to include your basket in the comments section because I'm really interested in seeing people's responses to this task. And who knows, maybe I'll eventually do a research project on this. By the way, this very much links in from my perspective to work by a psychologist at the University of Texas, Austin, a fantastic psychologist who does really, really cool research, on dog cognition and many other topics. But the one that's relevant to my clip here is the research where he basically will show people, let's say, an office space, an image of an office space, and then ask people to evaluate the personality traits of the person whose office is being depicted in that image. And it turns out that people have a very, an uncanny ability to evaluate people's personalities based on seeing the spaces that they live in. And so, without further ado, let me go through some of my own, as I said, basket of goods. So, some of you who know my work know that, well, not my work, but know my aesthetic preferences. It has been a long dream of mine to own a Triumph, specifically a Bonneville. Now, this Bonneville is a contemporary model, but it mimics the models from the 60s and 70s. And I specifically like the two-tone uh, red and white, or I prefer the orange and white version. And I'm in negotiations with my wife right now to see whether I will be given the safety clearance to be able to go. And I don't even have a motorcycle license. Frankly, even if I never drove it, just putting it in my house would be enough for me. I just love how it looks. So the Triumph is something that would definitely be in my basket. It captures something in my aesthetic preferences. Whenever we're driving, I could notice a Triumph from a mile away, and I usually go into a semi-religious fervor when I see one. Now here's another one that captures the essence of Gad. This is a old school Vespa. I love Vespas, especially old school ones, and I love sidecars. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's a form of aesthetic nostalgia. I just love this. So right now you've got Gad in a Triumph, and you've got Gad uh, with a Vespa and a sidecar. Next one, continuing with the same color theme. Oh my goodness. Now this is a 23 window Volkswagen van. Very rare, actually incredibly expensive. I mean, look at this thing. It's absolutely stunning. So the 23 window model is a very rare one. If I ever had enough money and we lived somewhere that is warm, that is conducive to owning such a car, this might be the car that you'd be seeing me in. And now we come to actually the camper that I mentioned. This is called the Happier Camper. It's it has a fully modular adaptive design that allows you to actually do quite a few things in such a small space. But look how it looks. And as I said, the fan who wrote that it made sense that I would find it attractive because it is both retro and futuristic, really captured part of the essence of the GAD aesthetic. Now, since we're talking about various modes of transportation, what do you think would be the types of cars if I had unlimited budget, if I could just own them as art pieces that I would have? You ready? This is going to blow your mind. I bet some of you have never even seen these cars. It is very much part of the type of aesthetics that I'm most attracted to, the Art Deco aesthetic. So check this out. I mean, can you believe these cars? I mean, look at this. These are not cars. These are pieces of art. So this hopefully gives you a sense of the type of, again, aesthetics that I love. So we have the Triumph, we have the Vespa with the sidecar, we have the 23 window Volkswagen van, we've got the Happier Camper, and now we've got all these incredible, I didn't jot down all their different makes, but they're usually, I think these two are from the 30s and this one is from the 40s. But it's very much of an Art Deco design. And then here we come, since we want to stay in Art Deco, this is Art Deco furniture, and then of course Art Deco architecture. I just find it so unbelievably pleasing to the eye. And so there you have it. I can't explain why my visual cortex is titillated the way that it is when I see these, but that constitutes part of the GAD aesthetics. And then moving to the more artistic domain, some of you may remember that, if I can't remember when was the last time I posted this, but on my social media, but I've posted on a few occasions Italian posterists that, you know, usually they're from the 1920s, 1910, 1930s, around then. This is actually one that was shared when I shared this one. I think one of my fans shared this one, and so both of these are exactly the type of posterist art that I love. And then to sort of more quote highbrow art, although I don't like to place such an appellation. I mean, if art moves you, it moves you, whether it's worth $100 or $100 million. Arguably, if not with certainty, my favorite painter is Gustav Klimt, the Austrian painter. This is the Kiss. This is the portrait of Adele Bauer. And I think they are both currently in the new gallery. A few years ago, when the new gallery opened, I was planning on taking the whole family for the opening to actually see these in person. We weren't able to go, but I still hold out hope that once the pandemic with the virus, with no known ethnic or geographic origin, because it would be racist to point to where it comes from and who spread it and who uh, hasn't engendered any consequences for their diabolical actions. When that pandemic is over, hopefully I'll get a chance to go and visit the new gallery in New York. Now, moving on to attire, here we've got some, oh yeah, some tweed wool three-piece suits. I love that look, that classic, sleek, beautiful look. That's really up my alley. And now that I'm back to being thin Gad, there are some old suits that I haven't worn in a long time that I think I might be able to get into again. And a Gad in a wool suit is a Gad that causes deep marital instability and deep attack on social cohesion. I am a huge fan of Irish newsboy caps. I've got a very, very uh, sizable collection. Well, sizable, maybe 10, 12 of these. Every year, my wife would order me a new model from a artisanal uh, Irish hat maker. And I'm hoping one day if I visit Ireland to actually go to that particular store or my, hat maker and hang out there. When it comes to, I'm very much of a bow tie guy, old school bow ties, thick bow ties. This is me quite a lot heavier a few years ago in 2017, wearing a bow tie. I seldom wear ties these days or bow ties, but when, you know, historically, whenever I wore formal attire, it's usually with bow ties. And sticking to that theme, I love antique pocket watches. I only have one that I got just right after my doctoral graduation in 1994, but you know, I would love to own a collection of these types of vintage antique pocket watches. And finally, remember earlier I mentioned that I don't like to say possessions when it comes to our pets, but this is an image of my Gronendal Belgian Shepherd, the black variety, and of our gray turf. This is Amar, this is Samra, this is an art, a painting that a fan of mine who's absolutely unbelievable in his talents and his kindness did when Samra passed away. Amar passed away in 2012, and Samra passed away in 2018. And for as long as I can remember, I've always been a Belgian Shepherd guy. There are dogs and there are Belgians, and uh, one has nothing to do with the other. Belgians are these aristocratic, regal, majestic creatures. Not that other dogs are not beautiful, but there's something truly unique about Belgians. And so this gives you a sense. So to kind of summarize, go very quickly, we had the Triumph, we had the Vespa with the sidecar, we had the 23 window Volkswagen wagon or van, we had the Happier Camper, a bunch of Art Deco cars, Art Deco furniture, and Art Deco architecture, some vintage 1920s, roughly circa 1920s Italian Posteris, Gustav Klimt, also roughly of that era from Austria. And then when it comes to clothing and attire and associated things that you wear and so on, vintage wool tweed three-piece suits, Irish uh, newsboy hats, bow ties, uh, old school vintage pocket watches, and of course Belgian Shepherds. So there you have it. By the way, some of you may know this or maybe not. Andre 3000, one of the lead singer of Outkast, a few years ago started a clothing company that was like a dream for me. It was all that stuff. It was, the two-tone old school shoes, the bow ties, the tweed, the wool, the cool caps, the wool caps. Uh, but I think, as I understand it, I didn't really do a deep dive into the marketing failures of his company. I think that it was so overpriced that it maybe was difficult for people who would have otherwise wanted to adopt some of these sartorial styles. They weren't able to because I think it was simply out of their reach. But it's quite amazing to see someone who maybe is a tiny bit younger than me. I don't know exactly how old he is, but who had a very similar sense of aesthetics. So that's my basket of Gadisms. Please tell me what yours is. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Uh, that's all part of consumer psychology and consumer behavior. Take care, everybody. Cheers.